Welcome to Beers and Biscuits. I'm Karen.
I'm Nicole.
Grab a beverage, give your dog a biscuit, and enjoy this wonderful conversation we're about to have.
Yes. Excited.
I'm really excited. So tonight's guest that we are about to listen to, and we'll do our whole fun little intro with her in a minute. But tonight we got to talk to Mandy Boutelle, and she has so many different um, accolades or businesses or whatever you want to call them behind her, but she is most noticeably known for Woof Cultr, and she has her own podcast, The Leashed Mind.
Yep.
And I get to call her one of my book besties. We love to talk about books and all things not dog related because sometimes we are allowed to talk about things that aren't dogs.
Yeah, definitely. And that's not something that I can get into because I don't read like you read, which
Mhm.
is just like crazy insane. Like how much you read and how quickly you read. Like I look at some of those books and they're like I don't know, like encyclopedia, like thick. And you're like, I finished this in a weekend. And I'm like, oh my God. I could like barely, get through my emails and Karen's read up a 1,000-page book already.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm on book 15 of
Oh my God.
2024.
It's
But the other side is
crazy.
I do listen to books as well. I read them and I do listen. So, like, if I'm like doing something around the house, I'll have a book going. So, that's
I mean,
how,
I get that. I get that. Like I love audiobooks, especially because
yeah.
I drive so much.
Right.
But the amount of like and the level of chill I would need to have to actually sit with a book in my hands, looking at it to finish it, I I would be like that skeleton waiting for the bus that never comes, right? Like I would just be like dead by the time I tried to get through it. I don't even know how many books I've started and not finished.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, over the years, I don't know, probably
It's
1,000.
for me, it's one of those things like, and I'm sure you can relate to this too, even though you're not like a big reader, but it's like we spend a lot of time in front of computers or in front of our phone dealing with clients or emails or business stuff. And so by the end of the day, I don't want to look at another screen. And I'm just like, I'd rather read a book and just escape this universe because I read like a lot of fantasy. So I like there's dragons and all this fun stuff. And it's like I don't have to be in the Excel spreadsheets doing that.
Right.
And who wants to watch the news anyway? Because that's all just depressing.
Oh yeah. No. No,
So
thank you.
I like to, yeah, we like to read and we have some fun. But, but that is not what we talk about in this episode
That's
with
true. True.
Mandy. She very graciously and very beautifully shared her story of her dog Pip going through Pip, right? Yeah. Going through canine cognitive dysfunction. I know that there's a disorder, canine cognitive dysfunction disorder, something like that. Forgive me about not remembering the exact clinical diagnosis. I'm not a doctor. I'm a dog trainer. But she really beautifully shares that story and how she dealt with her senior dog going through this decline,
Right.
and not just how she gave her dog grace, how she gave herself grace during this process and this experience that she went through as well.
Yeah. And I think that's really important for people to understand that. And I know we've said it before and we'll say it again too, that, we need to give ourselves a lot more grace when it comes to things that we're dealing with in life, whether that's, focused around our dog or not. I think just in general, people are so hard on themselves. And, it kind of makes me think back to like the episode that we had with Ashley too, that we just go and go and go. And we don't necessarily take time to sit with ourselves and understand and process what we need when we're going through these hard and difficult times. And so I think that was really good to listen to.
Absolutely, because I think it's an episode that you can get so much from, and it doesn't have to just be your dog is going through what is effectively canine dementia. It's you can take away from it if you have a reactive dog, if you have a senior dog, if you have a dog that's going through a medical period in life.
Right.
Like you said, it's about taking that time for ourselves, because these dogs do require so much, and they take so much. They give us so much, just as much as they take, but sometimes we need to take those breaks. And
Right.
I feel like right now I'm hearing myself and I'm like, that's what Neil was literally just trying to say to me
Right.
5 minutes before we started recording this. So it's give it a listen. You're gonna hear a beautiful story, but you're also going to maybe hear something that you need to help yourself in the process of helping your dog.
So let's get started.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. How exciting this one is. Well, the guest is exciting, but it's going to be very informative. Well, yeah, that's not the best way of putting it, but I don't want to be like, oh yeah, this is going to be the most fun conversation you've ever had in your life.
Way to start, Debbie Downer. Thank you.
What an intro.
I'm trying, okay? I went in too hot because I was so excited to introduce Mandy, but then it occurred to me what we were going to talk about, and I was like, ooh, maybe not want to sound so excited. So, our guest tonight is Mandy. She is the creative mind behind Woof Cultr, and she is also the creative mind and the force behind the Leashed Mind podcast. And you co-work together on DigiWolf with your husband. Such an amazing person. So much fun, so much light and happiness. And I'm just excited for her to be here.
No, so, thank you.
So full disclosure and transparency, because that's what we're all about here. But I had no idea that was all the same person.
Oh my God, really?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously know you from Woof Cultr. I've got like a closet full of stuff, but I did not realize that Mandy was also the Mandy that does the podcast. So, yeah.
Can you tell I have ADHD? I got to do all the things from different things.
All the things.
Keep me occupied.
Yep. I feel that.
So do you want to introduce yourself a little bit more?
Yeah, sure. My name is Mandy Boutelle. A lot of people mispronounce my last name, so I did the honor of saying that for you.
Thank you.
But I am a former certified trainer, dog walker, really got into graphic designs, nerded out on it. And then I realized I got really burnt out and I wanted to help other dog professionals with the burnout and entrepreneurs. So I started the Leashed Mind podcast, where I talk about mental health for dog trainers, pet professionals, and it's been going really good, working on season 2. Yeah, I dabble with kind of everything. I have 3 businesses with my husband, clearly have ADHD, and I just like to spread myself out very thinly sometimes.
It's like the dog fur. It just gets spread everywhere.
Yeah, ADHD glitter everywhere. Yeah.
So what we do with all of our guests, and we like to think of it as fun, but sometimes it can get pretty serious. We do some icebreakers because we want to make sure to torture, I guess. No, but we want to make sure to have fun.
Concerning. The background chuckles are they're scaring me.
Nicole, do you want to go first?
Oh, yes. Yes. Okay. All right, Mandy. What is your favorite smell?
I'm going to sound like an alcoholic, but IPA. It's the piney hoppy smell. I really like it.
Nice.
Nice. That's a solid
I'll take
choice.
it. I'll take it.
All right. Question number
These are
2 for
fun.
you. If you had... Oh, we've got a list.
Keep them coming, yeah.
If you had to use a fake name, what name would you make up?
I have had one since I was 16 when boys would ask me my name and I didn't want to talk to them. My name was Kendra.
Oh,
Kendra. Nice.
very nice.
Very 90s. No one,
Yeah.
They were like, what?
Mine is Penelope or Dallas Wilson. Like I go all out with the first and last name.
Yeah. All right then.
Okay, then.
Now you gotta go change that name.
No, I'm gonna go change it now. Yeah. What about you, Karen? You can't get out of this.
I always wanted to be called Paige for some reason.
Paige, like a little
very
boy that runs and
androgynous.
gets things.
Yeah. That's what I wanted. Well, first and foremost, I am a Karen in the age of Karens. So
You
anything
say
but
that so
Karen.
heavy.
I've never asked to speak to a manager in my life. So slightly dating myself, but also not because I didn't watch a ton of it. But if you guys are familiar with the show, what was it called? Even Stevens, way back on Disney Channel. The sister, the character's name was Ren. And I was always like, I want to be called Ren because it's already in my name. But
Do it. Do it. I like that.
Just cut the caw.
Yeah,
Here.
exactly.
The
Exactly.
caw,
Okay, I'm gonna call you Ren from now on.
Deal. I'm into it.
Rennie. Ren. I like that.
Rennie. Oh, I like
That's
that.
cute.
Do you have another one, Nicole? Because I do.
Okay, I do. So Mandy, what was your very first job ever?
Okay, so my mom was like, you don't have to get a job. We'll just pay you to get good grades. I didn't get good grades, so joke's on her. But so my first actual job, I was 19 and I was fresh out of beauty school. So I was a hairstylist at JCPenney.
Oh, JCPenney.
Oh, the penny.
Yeah. Back when they did that. Yeah.
Right. I've got many a haircut at the JCPenney. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Who hasn't?
Right. I don't think I have. I think that was too bougie.
Oh, it's an
for us.
experience.
Yeah.
It's an experience. Yeah.
That's where all the fresh, either people fresh out of school or people on their way out go to work because they hate doing hair.
Right.
Fair.
And it shows. It shows.
Right.
All right, Karen, what's your question?
All right. You apply to be a part of the Avengers, but you are rejected because your superpower is kind of boring. What is it?
Wow, how did you think of these?
Google.
Okay. My power is boring. I talk to people until they fall asleep.
Oh.
Which is kind of fitting with the ADHD. I talk a lot.
Yeah.
But I also feel like that could be helpful, Maybe not to the Avengers, but
they'd be like, God, she's been talking for 2 hours and he's not asleep. I don't know.
That was a good one. That was a good one, Karen.
Thank you. We go hard with our icebreaker questions. We're not just what's your favorite color? Although you can tell us that if you want to.
It's great.
Perfect. All right. So now we are going to get into your story. So you've had a few dogs in your life, and there's one specifically that we are going to be touching on. Do you want to share a little bit about this dog?
Yeah. So I had a senior dog named Pip from October 2019 until July 2022. I had always wanted to adopt a senior dog. It was just something kind of on my list of like, give an old dog a home, live out his retirement with a really good trainer in person for a good life. There was a specific little red foxy looking dog there's this rescue in San Francisco called Muttville, and it's only senior dogs. They say they're senior dogs. Sometimes you're like, I think that dog's like 5 or 6. But that's besides the point. But I was stalking this dog on their website for months, and I was just like, he looked like the fox from the Disney movie Fox and the Hound, but with floppy ears. If you've seen photos of him, you totally get it then. But so I was like, I want that dog. He's so cute, and he just looks fluffy, and he's tiny, and he's everything I wanted in like a mutt. And so I was just like, God, I want that dog. And my husband was just like, I'm not ready yet. Like, I'm not ready for another one. Like, I was like, oh, but we had our dog Penny, who was a like pit bull shepherd mix at the time. And I was just like, she would get along. Like, she needs a little sidekick. Like, come on. And so flash forward, a few months after that, after Woof Cultr is successful enough, people wear my shirts. We were in San Francisco, and a trainer that I followed, she tagged me in a post, and she was wearing Woof Cultr, and I was like, that's the dog. And she was fostering him. And I was like, hey, I love your shirt, but like, really, like, can I meet that dog? I want to see if he gets along with my dog Penny, because I have been stalking him online for months. And she was like, are you serious? Like, yes, I would love to meet you and have him possibly go with you. And so we met, and Pip and Penny immediately were like, hey, what's up? You're cool. And I was just like, what happened? And so Josh was like, all right, we're adopting him.
We love
literally
Josh.
Literally signed the papers. And then they were like, oh yeah, by the way, he has separation anxiety. And I was like, are you kidding me right now? And I was fine with it because at the time, Josh, my husband, was a CSAT, certified separation anxiety trainer. So I was like, that's fine. We can work on it. Didn't want to, but if anyone can handle this, it's us. And so we went in just going like, all right, we're going to work on the steppings, see how it goes. He had a great existence with us in San Francisco. First half of his time with us, I was a dog walker. So he came on walks with me all the time, wasn't away from mom. Worked on the set banks. We were able to leave him for up to an hour, I think. Just he adjusted. We were able to work on it. And then when I went to training full time, we were able to put him in daycare, and he loved daycare. And I feel like that is the most ideal situation you can have for a dog with set banks that isn't reactive. That is okay with strangers and other dogs. So we were just like, great, this is working out. Then COVID happened, and our entire lives were uprooted. So that was around April 2020. We had him for about 6 months at this point. Moved to the Southern Oregon coast with family, stayed with them for about 9 months till we could save up to buy a house. During that time, our other senior dog, Penny, she passed away from cancer very abruptly. That was August 2020. And I think after he lost Penny, he kind of, things started deteriorating. And the thing with adopting a senior dog, especially one that was found as a stray, he had a lot of health issues. I went and looked at his records from the rescue, and they had put about $36,000 into him.
Wow.
Oh my gosh.
I was like,
well, I mean, kudos to that rescue.
Dog. Oh yeah, they have so much funding and donations. They're amazing.
It's amazing.
But I was reading his charts, and they were like, if he's not able to get better by this time, like, we have to think about euthanasia. And I was like, okay, so they put all this money into this dog and pumped him with all these medications. Like, can you help me? And during COVID, you couldn't really go into the vet. You couldn't go with them. And it was so stressful as that was. But I'm explaining this because it was a process of like getting him off certain meds and then seeing what was working. And it was chaos, as 2020 was for most of us. But then I started noticing a few things here and there where he'd get really frantic And we had been working on the settings, had been able to leave him, and then everything just went out the window because everything in our environment, our lives changed so abruptly, understandably so.
Right.
But then it would get to the point where it's like I would close the door to go to the bathroom, and then he would start panicking. And I'm like, this wasn't a problem before. What is this? And why was it only with me? He could give a fuck if Josh left the room. Could not care. He's like, see ya. Where's mom? Do you have food? Okay, I'll take that. Where the fuck is mom? But it would be catatonic, freaking out, panting, very stressed face, ears back, wide mouth, whining. And we're just like, what is this now? And so we're just like, that's weird. Like maybe it's just like 2020, hyper attached to mom because she's not leaving at all. Whatever. If we had to go somewhere, we'd take him in the car with us. We just adjusted to having Pip with us and kind of just, he was my shadow for the longest time.
Right.
I think I'll stop there so that you guys can ask questions because otherwise I'll just go.
I kind of feel like I went through this a little bit with my first dog, Hershey. So I adopted her when she was 7, and she had lived the first 7 years of her life outside in a kennel as a, quote, guard dog. And so didn't have any socialization, didn't have any experience with even being in a house, all of that stuff. But when we had moved quite a few times because I, at that time, was in the military. So, moved several times, moved cross country, moved back. And it was maybe about 10 or 11 years old that I started noticing little things with her. And in the back of my mind, I was saying, wow, this kind of seems like sundowning with a person, right? And so I kind of started like trying to look into it more, but at that time there really wasn't a lot of information on it. And I'm sure, at some veterinary level that there is, they were discussing it and doing research and that stuff. But I mean, I don't necessarily think that it was really considered, a true disease in dogs at that time. And yeah, I mean, I started noticing little things here and there, like you. She'd be outside in the yard and I'd call her and call her and call her. And I'd call her, but she'd like go to the neighbor's yard. And then I was like, okay, but I'm over here. So then I would like walk around to find her. And then she would like startle, like, oh my God, it's you. Get super disoriented a lot of times. And yeah, so I always wondered if she had started showing signs of that before she passed. But
with Pip, like I think I gave you guys just the like how he was before. But then after we adopted our dog we have now, Fern, we had her, they lived together for maybe a year. And when you have a puppy and a senior dog, you really see the difference. And it really like, Karen's face is like, oh yeah, you're living that right now. But it also, it's not even just the physical or personality differences, it's the mental cognition.
Right.
And I think that was really the point for me to be like, oh, some things are slowing down and some things are, the synapses are firing off and they're not connecting. When I really noticed it is when I would call his name and I'd be like, Pip, and he would just, I'd be behind him. And so he wouldn't see me. And he'd be like, where's mom? Where'd she go? Frantically, and then take off down the field. Right. And I'd be like, Pip! And I'd be screaming, didn't hear me. I'd have to run and like tap his butt. And then he'd turn around and be like, whoa, where'd you come from? I'd be like, right. Okay, something's going on. This isn't normal.
Yeah. I mean, I've often wondered, and this is just my science brain verbal vomiting on you guys, but I've always wondered, when we have really young puppies, we have like kind of what you said, like a lot of misfiring happening there as they're coming into puppyhood and then adolescence. And I kind of always felt like a lot of times if there's an interruption in that natural growth period, that just like humans, we can kind of develop an interruption in like object permanence, right? So I'm seeing something, I know it's there. We do this with young kids, testing cognition with young kids. You know, you play peekaboo. Do they like cry because they think you're really gone? Or do they get the concept that you're just hiding behind your hands and you're coming back? And so I've always felt like with looking at especially separation anxiety, I know you're in the bathroom, but I don't see you're in the bathroom, so I'm going to freak out. We see stuff like that a lot. But then also with the other end of it, the dementia part of it, or the cognitive dysfunction part, we start to see that same thing happen. Just because I don't see you means you're gone. You've left the planet. And so, I think it really has developed over the years that they're really looking at that in terms of a true cognitive dysfunction. And so that's why we're calling it canine cognitive dysfunction. But I just always felt it was really kind of interesting, the similarities there and what's happening with the brain. It was a long way to say that one sentence.
No, but it is. It's well, and I helped care for my grandmother that had dementia that turned into Alzheimer's. So when I started noticing some of these things with Pip, I was like, this seems like doggy dementia, like, because he couldn't remember when I literally was standing behind him. If I say I closed the baby gate, he can see me, but he's like, you're there. And it would just be full catatonic. And I'd just be like, what is going on? He didn't used to get this so shaken up. And then I was like, I need to do some Googling. I needed like, is this a thing? What the hell do I do? Because I have A, never heard about it.
Right.
B, haven't been taught about this in any of my training courses. So what do I do? And you don't see enough people talking about it. Maybe here and there now, but it's not talked about enough. And I think that's because there needs to be more research on it, frankly. But I had to reach out to a behaviorist because I was just like, what do I do?
Right.
My dog is essentially losing his brain and aging, and I don't know how to keep his quality of life good. And then when do I know when it's like time? Because he's not going to be able to tell me. And it's a very hard place to get to emotionally, because while you're watching your dog who you love and care about decline, you're also really putting your own mental health on the back burner. And that's something I talked about in my podcast as well, of how it really screwed up my mental health. As much as I loved Pip, I would never do that again, because it took me 2 years to come out of that dark hole. I was isolated. I didn't leave the house for like 2 years because I couldn't leave Pip. And having to explain people in a new city where I just moved, hey, can I bring my senior dog with me? I can't leave him alone. I have to bring him with me. I can't get a sitter. Like, and it ostracizes you because it's hard to. So I just had to be like, all right, I'm just going to wait until he's done and give him a good life. And then I'll take care of myself after, I guess, which is a hard way to live.
So I would like to just back up a step, because I kind of feel like we barreled into this, and I just want to take it back a step and explain a little bit about
we need
what
that's Karen's way of saying thank you, Nicole, for derailing everybody.
No. So what we're talking about is a condition that is called canine cognitive dysfunction. Unfortunately, from the deep dive that Nicole and I both went on, there is not much research out there. I think, Nicole, I believe you said 2013 is the latest you found?
Just going through Google Scholar and trying to find like legitimate
that sounds about
scholarly
right.
things about it. It was about 2016. There were some things a little bit before that, but in terms of like now we're starting to do some research was about 2016.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's like what I read.
So we will attach some of the studies in the show notes, but I just want to briefly read from this abstract. This is from an article from the National Library of Medicine. It is called Canine Cognitive Dysfunction, Pathos, something that I can't pronounce because I'm not super smart, diagnosis and treatment. And basically the abstract just states that canine cognitive dysfunction, also known as CCD, is similar to the human Alzheimer's disease. CCD is common in dogs 8 years and older, affecting between 14% and 35% of the pet dog population. Obviously, right there, that is a huge percentage difference. So we certainly do need to get some more studies done. But it is, seen with apparent confusion, anxiety, disturbance of the sleep-wake cycle, and decreased interaction with owners. And those are just some of the clinical signs. Obviously, that is not all of them, but this is what we are going to be talking about, just to give you all a little bit of a background on it.
That I just actually had for my super secret second job. I just had somebody contact me looking for a recommendation for a trainer, and what she was describing were the symptoms. They had recently moved. The dog was, I think, 10 years old, very disoriented, really marked change in behavior with now snapping at her, wasn't sleeping very well, had started, going to the bathroom in the house. And so, of course, like, reputable professionals do, as I said, I think you need to see your vet first. I said, this is what, I think that you should highlight when you talk to your vet, these particular things, right? Because I'm not going to diagnose anybody, obviously, but I wanted her to be able to go to her vet with specific things, written down ahead of time that she would remember to talk to her vet about, because I felt like it was going in this direction. And she came back with, well, my vet says he's fine. So I think that can be a big source of that disparity between the 14 and the 35%.
Well, I also found another interesting statistic. Now, granted, again, we need more research. So this is from today's veterinary practice. It's the management of management of dogs and cats with cognitive dysfunction. And the interesting statistic that I learned from this was that only 1.9% of cases are actually diagnosed by veterinarians, because most people just assume that these are normal aging signs for our dogs. So we gotta do better by our dogs.
I wonder too if there's a little bit of reluctance there, because obviously because it is so new. We say, okay, it's been 7 years that this research has started, but in the grand scheme of things, that's infancy when we're talking about researching behavior issues or behavior function, brain function rather. So there's not a lot of history built up there, but I'm wondering too if maybe there's a little bit of reluctance to jump right into that diagnosis, because obviously there is no cure for it. And from what I read, that a lot of times it progresses very quickly. So
I was just gonna say, like, it came on sudden. I went to my vet when I started noticing, and I was just like, hey, like you said, Nicole, like, here's this list of everything we're experiencing. And we experienced like weird potty habits indoors. And I'm like, he's potty trained. This is weird. And just a lot of just like things are not going on. And I was just like, I don't know what to do. I suspect, because I had done Googling and I was just like, based on this list, I kind of suspect CCDS. What would you say I do? Do I reach out to a vet behaviorist? Now, I have a background in training, so I know that vet behaviorists exist. The average dog owner is not going to know that.
Absolutely.
That and vet behaviorists are not very accessible financially. They're not cheap. And so I had to really, I don't make a lot of money. So I had to be like, am I okay and able to afford a $200, $300 appointment for my senior dog to get some type of diagnosis of yes, he's getting close to death, or here, this is how you give him a few more months of some cognition. And then the medications and the supplements, like those aren't cheap either. So it's another thing about it being accessible to people. And I felt like, do I afford this or do I let my dog go? And that is a really shitty place to have to be in.
Right. Absolutely.
Splitting the finances in your dog's life. Like, it's shitty.
Yeah. How did you get to that point? Did you ever get the actual specific diagnosis or?
Yeah, we were able to get a diagnosis, and the vet behaviorist, Dr. Vali Pathasari, she is with Synergy Behavior Solutions in Portland. And she just was like, yeah, I really do suspect that this is CCDS. It's very hard for them to give a definitive yes, but she was just like, with everything you're telling me and everything I'm seeing, like, and his health history and medication history we had him on, because the thing is here, everything I'm telling you guys that I experienced with him, he was on a high dose of fluoxetine and gabapentin. He was on like the pain meds, he was on the behavior meds. We already had that and they did nothing.
Right.
And so I was like, especially if these things are not helping him, what the hell do I do? And we did get him on a supplement, and I think that improved his cognition for maybe 3 months, which was great for him. And it was a diet change as well. But again, financially, it was very hard to do all these things to hopefully give him a few more months of a few more brain cells. And I mean, yeah, it gave him a good end quality of life, but I think it could have ended sooner, if I'm being completely honest, and I'm not even talking about the financial burden. It's just noticing his quality of life, and was it worth that much for him? And was I extending it for me, or was I extending it for him? Which is a hard place to get to and ask yourself.
Well, I remember, so you did a really beautiful episode on your podcast about this, and you went into so much detail and you shared so much.
I can't listen to that episode anymore.
Oh gosh. I cried. I was like, but I want to kind of ask you a hard question, I think, because we kind of have to not be who we are for a moment. If you could take the trainer, all of that knowledge out.
Not throw it out the window, not happen.
And we're just speaking to kind of the average person. What were kind of some of, I mean, I know you've already spoken about it, but what were like the most alarming, we've got to act on this now, kind of signs that people can kind of look out for?
The inability to settle and relax and nap. That is something I noticed. He was up and pacing around a lot more and panting. Mm-hmm. And for me, I'm like, this seems like distress. He's not able to relax. And then when he would be like in a settle position or lay down, he would just be constantly panting. And I'm like, that doesn't seem normal. That, and then I think really the inability to see or hear spatially was a real thing for me, to be like, he can't hear me. And I'm having to physically tap him to get his attention now. That's something, it wasn't slow. It happened overnight.
Right. Did you see any like real difference in the separation anxiety? Did it get worse or?
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I said that we used to bring him in the car with us when we had to go places. It got to the point where I had to stay home. So if we had to go grocery shop, we used to be able to, take Pip in the car, leave him in the back seat, and we'll just go to the store really quick. It got to the point where if we did that, I'd have to stay in the car, or we just wouldn't take him and I'd have to stay home, because he would get so distressed that he would start clawing all over the seats, clawing at the windows, choking himself with his leash. And so we were just like, okay, this isn't safe for him anymore. And that was probably it. Again, I can't really think of like specifics, but I know that happened pretty quick, where we were just like, oh, okay, this is not how it used to be. This is clearly taking a turn somewhere. But yeah, it got to a point where I couldn't go anywhere. I couldn't do anything. If I did anything, Pip had to come with me, and I could not leave him. Even at the vet, I had to go in with him to the rooms because he would freak out.
Did you notice any changes between him and Penny's interactions?
Well, Penny passed before he started declining. No, but I think that him losing her and not having a sibling did screw some things up. But Fern, our younger dog, they were always like, meh, they weren't a good
anyway.
Match. So yeah, she was just like, "What? You don't want to play with me?" Bop.
Yeah, I've heard that was something too, where they can start to, become aggressive with animals that they've always been fine with in the home.
It wasn't aggressive. It was just like she really bugged the heck out of him, like more so than like annoying puppy, and like he didn't want to be around her.
Yeah,
for sure.
So you started to speak a little bit on like the supplements and the food changes, and you started to share that you saw some minor changes. And obviously I don't necessarily want to get so much into like the supplements and foods because that's going to differ for each dog, but what were some of those small changes you did start to see?
So one thing physically I saw was that his eyes had gotten cloudier before I saw the vet behaviorist, and I was like, I'm noticing like his eyes are getting cloudy. I don't know if that's glaucoma or if this is all tied into CCDS. From what I read back then, they did say that losing vision, hearing kind of all goes with it. And so he started looking like really like foggy and kind of like blank stare. And then after like the subtle changes we were also doing acupuncture as well. I started seeing like his eyes looked clearer, and I was like, oh, hey buddy, like you got a little sparkle back. Okay. And like he seemed a little more cheerful and chipper, not so down. But in good days and bad days too. It was never like a consistent like thing.
Yeah, I was just thinking too, one of the things that I remember with my dog Hershey was that there was one time where I moved her food dish.
Yeah.
And she was like, she couldn't find it. Like it literally was like just at the other side of the cabinet. I had to like almost like a galley style kitchen. So I had it at the end of one cabinet versus the other cabinet. I mean, maybe
the maneuvering.
3 feet away. And she could not find it.
Nope.
It was like, yeah.
Saying that, like that brings up, like, I couldn't move his beds. If I moved them, he would just lay in the spot where the bed was. And I'd be like, oh, buddy, honey. And I'd have to like go get his bed. And Josh is like, we can't move anything. Like it just needs to be where it is so he remembers.
So again, this might be not the nicest question. Well, like I don't mean it in a bad way. It's just I always feel bad asking something like this, but
I'm an open book. I love sharing this stuff. I want people to know.
Looking back on that time, what would you do differently?
I feel like this is such a... Don't cancel me.
You also, if you don't feel comfortable answering, you don't have to. We don't have to share. Yeah.
I'm happy to. If I were to do it differently, and factoring in the impact of my mental health and how bad it screwed me up, I would really reconsider. Sorry, Fern had to adjust. I would really reconsider adopting a senior dog. I don't think I knew where it could end. I didn't think that it would go that way, and how much of I don't want to call him a burden, but it was a very big burden on me mentally and emotionally and financially.
Well, I remember in your episode, your podcast, and forgive me if I'm getting it a little bit confused, but
you probably remember more than I do.
and I also don't want to be insensitive, because you just said you don't want to listen to it. The worst when this happens, my brain was there. I should have written it down.
She had a brain fart.
Is Peter okay? Did Peter run away?
You can definitely keep going. I can still hear you. I just opened the door.
I didn't realize. I thought you left your headphones behind because I wasn't really looking.
It's super loud, so I can hear it.
That's my melodious voice. No, so in your episode, you shared that it was, and again, forgive me if I'm remembering it wrong, but you just were crying to Josh that you just wanted to leave the house. You just wanted to be able to go out. And I think
I couldn't go to a doctor's appointment.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. Like I couldn't go to the dentist. I couldn't go to a doctor's appointment. As a female, you got to go to certain appointments. I couldn't do that. I had to put off my health for Pip. I'm grateful I was in the position I could do that, but I don't think a lot of people can. I don't think a lot of people work from home and can accommodate their dogs in such a way. So in a way, it was perfect for him, for his life, but it did come at my detriment.
Again, you don't have to answer if you don't want to, but for different reasons, I kind of feel like I went through a little bit of that same thing very briefly, where, my mental health took a big dive after Charlie passed. But for you, in that, what's the word, Karen? She's like, I have no idea. I don't know even what you're trying to say. In that respect.
I was totally going to get that word for you.
I was almost there.
Yeah, no. In that respect of looking at you and your mental health, looking back on it now, do you think the biggest contributor was the fact that you couldn't leave, or maybe how draining it was to see this decline and have no control over it, or maybe a combination of those?
Oh, I do think the inability to leave the house, or even just be able to leave him with Josh, was a huge our ongoing inside joke. And again, please, people, don't cancel me. Our joke was that Pip was a prison, because that is how it really, I can't express it enough. When you can't leave your home and you can't go to a doctor's appointment even for your own health, that is when it's who we living for here at this point.
Right.
So there's that factor of it. And I think that your own mental health should always play a role in it, because you're all you have. But then on the other side, it tore me up to watch my old dog, who I thought I was giving this amazing end of life to, watching him decline. And I couldn't do anything about it. And it's just seeing oh babe, you're aging, and I can't do anything to stop it for you, and I can't make it easier for you. It did hit me really hard when I had made a reel for Woof Cultr, and it's still there. And it was like it was some audio, and it was like, hey, no, no. And it was me, and I said, like, you know, when you're telling your senior dog, like, you can't leave. And then we had to say goodbye to him like a week later. I know I hit you guys right in the heart.
It's hard. It's so hard.
You can't prepare for it. No one can prepare you for it. No one can say anything to make it easier, because it's your baby for all intents and purposes.
Right.
And you are having to watch them go on their way out. And so it's like, I can go on the back burner and just make this as good as possible for you.
And I think too, now I don't want to put words in your mouth, but for me, where I'm sitting now, I am going into this experience, not to toot my own horn, but with a wealth of knowledge. So
it is helpful.
I am seeing subtle, very, very subtle things that I'm like, And then I think for me personally, and I don't know if this is the same experience for you, but I think because of that wealth of knowledge, and also because of the way we choose to treat our animals through humane, ethical measures, there's almost like this extra pressure, because I feel like there's some people that may be listening to this and they're just going to be like, just leave the dog, just go to your doctor's appointment. And the three of us are sitting here and we can't imagine any of that, because I was just thinking that I moved CJ's bowls 6 inches to the right, and for a minute he was like, what the hell? And it's like, people don't get it. So I sometimes think having that force-free mentality almost works against us. And not against us, but like it is almost like a little bit more pressure, because we know what these animals deserve, if that makes sense.
Why do you think I didn't talk about it publicly when it was
Right.
happening? I was worried about judgment, and I was suffering in silence by myself because I didn't want to open up and say, hey, I can't leave my house and I do blame my dog for it, but there's nothing that we can control right now. So
it makes me so sad that you had to do that on your own, but I'm also so thankful that you're now willing and ready to share that story more openly.
Thank you. I don't want anyone to feel alone in that again. It was really, it's the darkest point I've ever had, for sure. But I think you're right that, like, being in the realm of the force-free community, there is always that I'm not doing it right, I'm not doing it enough. And a lot of the times people will like to throw their unsolicited opinions at you because of their own knowledge. Maybe they know more about diet, nutrition, whatever, but if they have not experienced it, they have not lived it in the moment, they do not understand your daily life and everything you are committing to this animal, they're not going to get it. And so that's why I never opened up about it when I was in it, because I needed to just get through it.
So I actually have a question for you, Nicole. So you've been sharing a little bit about your similar situation, and how far along in your experience did the symptoms and signs progress for your dog, if you want to share?
Yeah, I mean, I think I would say that I think 10 years old was probably not the right estimate if I look back now at when she did pass. So, maybe I started seeing it about 12 years old or so. Just very little things, very small things. And I didn't put really any thought into it, right? Because she's an old dog. She was a Great Dane mix, and I should be I should be thankful for every day past 6 or 7 years old, right? And so here I am at 10 years old and 12 years old. And eventually she passed when she was 14. But, you know, yeah, she was
impressive.
She was a fighter. She was a fighter. But, you know, when you go to the vet and you're like, oh, I'm starting to see some things, you know, and
that's an old dog.
It's an old dog. And I feel like we don't want to question the people that we're supposed to rely on.
Sure.
Right. But now I'm 10 years older. Maybe a little bit more. But I'm 10 years older.
5 years older.
And I'm 10 years wiser. And the amount of knowledge I have now compared to the knowledge I had then, there's no comparison. And so I feel like now I'm armed with enough knowledge, not only about understanding more about welfare, right? Because back then I wasn't as knowledgeable just in the training and behavior world. So, you know, now having this understanding about what welfare really means, and not just superficially, I'm providing a good home and my dog is happy and she eats good food, but what it really means to approach another being's life from a welfare mentality, I would push back on some of those things now.
Absolutely.
I would push back. It's not just old age. And yeah, thank you. I'm glad that she's made it to this age, but that's not a reason to discount these things that I'm seeing and feeling. And thank you for bringing that up, Karen, because we do go through this a lot. And I'm sure I know you've gone through it too, Karen, when we talk about the thyroid issues, but
oh God, don't get me started.
We have had so many clients over the years, right? Just in walking, not even in training clients, but just in walking clients that we've had for years and years and years. And so we've seen them grow up and we've seen them progress and we've seen these changes. And I can't even tell you how many times I've gently suggested something, or I've kind of tried to hint at something, or I've gotten to the point where I've said, you need your dog to go to the vet. And it's so ingrained in people to just be like, it's old age. The dog is just getting old. And I can't accept that anymore. I accepted it back then, and I accepted it with quite a few dogs that I've had over the years, but I don't accept that anymore. And I think that's because I was able to grow both as a trainer and behavior professional, but also as a guardian of an animal and understanding more about what they need.
I think from the human perspective with that, I fully agree. But I think a lot of the times people they're in denial. They don't want to accept that their dog is aging and declining, because then it's like they have to really face it. And I think that's where I was, honestly, most of 2021. I'm like, he's aging, he's getting older. And I think it helps to say that, like, we never really knew Pip's age. They said he was 8. I'm like, I don't know. He seems like maybe he's 10. And then, like, by the time it was 2022, I'm like, is he 14? Is he, like, where are we at now? Because it seems like things are getting real creaky and aging here. And so I was in that denial period for a while. And so when I say that, like, things could have ended sooner, it's because I think I was in the denial of really, like, looking at it, because it was too much for me to look at. And then when I really noticed it, that's when it got really bad.
Yeah, I think we do tend to put blinders on for a lot of things. But
it's usually out of love and, like, yeah,
absolutely.
The defense mechanism for us.
Yeah. But I do think also it does touch on that idea that it's just, there's such a lack of education, right? I mean, again, nobody
don't prepare you for it.
Right. Nobody said to you, well, hey, Mandy, you've got you're adopting a senior dog, you know, if you start to see these things, let's get you to the vet, or, you know, this
is what you should look for in
right.
this time. Yeah.
Yeah.
I would have loved to know that, just to be prepared.
We're all, you know, we're very reactionary in our approach to, I mean, we're human, so we're very reactionary in general. But, you know, I would love to see more of that, you know, even clients going to a puppy, you know, their first puppy exam, like they're likely, and I would venture to guess probably 99.9% of the time, they're not having discussions about, well, this is what's going to happen in adolescence, and this is the time frame, and be prepared to need a little extra help. Be prepared, you know, start now looking for trainers and behavior professionals, and really setting guardians up to be the best guardian they can be by helping them to educate themselves a little bit more about the whole process.
I feel like society, maybe this is more of a society thing, and maybe this is an ADHD tangent, but I feel like society is more accepting of anyone birthing a human baby and going, here you go. But then when we're raising puppies and going to that and seeing them through their entire life and watching them age, it's just like, yeah, you raise it, you're fine. Like, you feed them, you walk them, they're good. And it's like, there's so much more nuance to it that like we're not taught, because it's just a dog.
Right.
And it's like, no, they're a being, and they have cognitive decline too, and they have health problems too, and surgeries and things that we need to, you know, plan and be prepared for. Like, Karen, all your talks about healthcare and stuff for the dogs, I'm like, I need to get that, because it matters.
It does.
Yeah.
That's a hill I will die on my social media. If you come to my social media, I will talk about insurance with you, and the thyroid and everything else.
And not having to walk your dog every day.
Yeah. But I also kind of feel like what you guys were just talking about, it's kind of a vicious cycle. It's this, we love our dogs so much that we want to kind of ignore what's happening because we don't want them to leave us. But then when we get up the nerve to speak with a professional, we get that pushback of, well, he's just old, or this is just to be expected. And
you have to really fight.
Exactly. So I always tell people, and I'm not, this is no shade to vets or anything like that, but I always tell every single client of mine, your vet works for you. You don't work for your vet. And if you want a test done, if you want something for your dog,
you say it.
You get it. You don't leave that room until they are on board, or if they won't get on board, we get a second
new vet.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's exactly what I had to do with Pip, because our first vet wouldn't listen to me.
Yeah,
and wouldn't listen to me in the sense of like, they just kept writing it off and just being like, it's no big deal. Like, oh, we can do acupuncture, change his diet. And I'm like, no, you don't understand. And so that's why I had to go and find a vet behaviorist, because
I was actually just on a phone call with a vet because as professionals, we collaborate, and I have a working relationship with him. And he said the phrase, thankfully he corrected himself afterwards, because I think he could feel my cringe through the phone. He was like, medication isn't the solution. And I was like, and he was like, it's not the only part of the solution. And I was like,
thank you.
I was like, thank you. I was like,
nice
we were
catch.
not going to get off this phone if that was all you were going to say.
I mean, it does go back to, and we've talked about it a couple of times before. I have no clue which episodes we talked about it on, but having that relationship with the professionals, whether it's your trainer or your vet, you have to feel comfortable that you are being listened to. And if you don't, you need to find another professional where you have that safety with.
You would do that with your own doctor.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and the other thing here too that I just popped into my little ADHD brain that I think is worth pointing out in this topic is that the only thing that has not been mentioned this entire time is training. And I think it's just important to acknowledge that that's not part of the solution here. Like, yes, of course, the enrichment side of it, still work with your dog, keep their mind active. But for this specific case, or not case, but condition, training isn't even listed in any of the studies as a solution. Yes.
Right. Putting your a senior dog on place for 5 hours a day is not going to cure their CCD. Sorry, folks.
Well, and now you guys mentioned that. And it's funny that you said that, Karen, because I feel like in the back of my brain, I'm like, well, was I doing training with him at that time? No, because couldn't retain it. And he could barely remember the, but also with the CCDS, when I would do like enrichment boxes, snuffle mats, he would get so worked up that it would kind of heighten things for him and make his stress higher. And so it's like you hear all the time, like, oh, enrichment is good for decompression and relaxation, not for a dog that has cognitive decline. It depends. It's very touchy, but for him, it would ramp him up more and he would get more worked up. And something that did stick out to me, if we're thinking of like things that stuck out to me where I was like, this is concerning, it was that, what is the word?
We're horrible at this game.
Yeah, I know. I'm not going to do that to you guys. But
Nicole already did it to me, so.
He was insatiable. Like, just, it was a bottomless pit. He could eat and eat and eat and eat and never be full and just constantly frantic for food. And I was like, he was always a little piggy, but like, that was like extreme for me where I was just like, he just ate and he's acting like he hasn't eaten all day.
Okay. Can I just say, okay. So, I swear to God, true story. 2 days ago, Nicole, I literally typed out a message and I didn't send it because I was like, have you ever known of senior dogs becoming more interested in food? Because like CJ's always been the worst eater, but in the past few months, like he started to like go over and like paw at the food bin, and like his Chewy order arrived the other day and like I took the bag out and he was like pawing at it. And he's never done that before. And I was just like, I always, that senior dogs normally like have less interest in food. So that was my.
There's two ends of the spectrum. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's just something, start making that list. These are the things I'm noticing. Even if you're writing down like dates and times, I noticed it, Tuesday and it was in the morning. And then, maybe Wednesday it was, in the evening. And if you start to see these little patterns or you're starting to see things like that more and more, then, at least you're, again, going to your vet with, this is what I'm seeing. I'm noticing it. It's not just like, he smelled some fancy treat in there, but you're going in there armed with information. And that's one of the things that I really harped on when I was training. And I did come across these things where I thought, okay, you really need to talk to your vet about it. The biggest one obviously is pain, right? Doing a pain trial or trying to rule out pain. But for you, Karen, being that you're still an active trainer, arming them with what they can bring to the vet, right? And so there's all sorts of checklists that they can bring. I did see one even for the CCD, like a CCD checklist to bring to your vet. And having those things available, and even for you, start doing it now.
I didn't mean to just like hijack your story.
I was going to say that there is a website that I used to check off and kind of just keep me like, are we getting close? What do I need to look for? And it's a little morbid. It's an at-home euthanasia site, but they have so many resources for people that I recommend it to anyone that is like,
Right.
are we getting there? It's called Lap of Love. But they have so many resources. Like I'm looking at it right now, and it's over pet loss and grief. And then it's also, there's a quality of life assessment. Yep. How will I know it's time? Quality of life scale, quality of life daily assessment. So I don't want to say like, oh, they get to a certain age and you need to start checking that, but it is helpful to have something to refer to that you can say, okay, where are we now? How many of these are we crossing off? Who do I need to talk to start preparing?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I always, especially, if I thought there was, maybe a pain component to behavior, I always left the clients with, several different types of measures, or like you're saying, checklists, because the more information that they have when they go into the vet, the more likely the vet is, and it's sad that we have to say this, but the more likely they are to take what we're saying seriously, right? Because I think a lot of times what happens is we're too close to the situation. And so when we do have concerns, a lot of times I think they're dismissed, maybe not consciously dismissed, but dismissed as
like you're too zoomed into it.
Right.
Almost.
Right. Or, we're almost like, kind of hypochondriacs about it. Right.
Right.
And so I feel like having that backup with you is so helpful.
Well, I think it also kind of leads to that idea before of where we kind of just start to brush things off because we love them and we don't want it to be true. So we go, oh, well, he was just pawing on that bag because we didn't do a lot of training, so we didn't get a lot of treats. So we can always kind of justify what's happening. But if we have that tangible proof of 5 days out of the week it's happening, we can't really write it off. So
or like keep that in the back of your mind of like, oh, maybe he didn't get a walk today, maybe it's this, maybe this, but how many times am I seeing this?
Right.
How frequent is this happening? Is this happening with other situations?
Yeah, I think too, especially with this type of decline, the CCD decline, it's so helpful to know when that's happening too, because I think really probably, kind of like sundowning is,
that's kind of how it is.
Yeah. And I think if you're able to track that and trend that and say, I'm seeing most of these things, after this time or whatever, again, the more information you have with you, the better.
So we have talked about a broad spectrum of things here. And I also feel like we've kind of talked about the negatives a lot. So I would like to know, this is a two-parter. The first part is, during this time, what are some of the positives that you can take away from this experience? And I'll ask my second part after, if there are any positives.
They slow you down and they get you to appreciate your time with them. And you just get to, soak it up and just be present. It took me a bit to kind of just like, okay, wait, like it's about him. And then you just kind of you connect with them more. There's a lot more cuddling as he aged. But it was just like, I don't know. I feel like our bond was really good. And I was like, whatever you want, buddy. Like, I'll give you all the cheese. You eat whatever you want. Like, so I think it's learning to slow down with them because they're not going to be there that long. So just you have the luxury of being able to slow down with them.
So then the second part of this question is, what would you say is kind of your favorite memory of Pip No pressure.
Can I share 2? Because I have 2.
No. Yeah, of course.
Okay, so when we lived on Josh's aunt's property, they had fig trees. And this ties into why we named Fig. So they had fig trees, and around like August, September, fig season, they are everywhere. And they had a closed like acre, fence was closed, you could just let the dogs roam. And so we would open the doors and I'd be like, okay, go do your thing, bud. I'll see you whenever I see you. And he would go, he loved figs. The second he found that there was a buffet free, mom wasn't watching, under the trees, I would come downstairs and I'd be like, I haven't seen Pip for like 20, 30 minutes. Where is he?
Oh, no.
And he would come, I'd be like, Pip! And he'd come waddling up all round, distended belly. And he'd be like, I'm like, oh my God, you are fig fat. And he was just full of figs. And his poop would look like Fig Newton bars because he would eat so many. And then it got to the point where like I had to start leashing him up and he'd be like trying to get to the figs. And so when we got our kitten, I was like, we need to name him Fig because it was Pip's favorite fruit. So there's that story, and that's my favorite story. And anytime I eat a fig or see a fig, I think of Pip.
Oh.
I feel like I need to get a fig tattoo for Pip.
Yeah.
But so there's that one. And they're both food related, the stories. So that really shows you his personality. Man after my own heart. So there was another time I was upstairs at Josh's aunt's house and Josh was down the hall and I realized, I'm like, where's the dog? And Josh was like, oh, I thought he was with you. And then I hear a plate crash in the kitchen. And then I hear like frantic nails. And I'm like, what the fuck? And so I run downstairs and I was like, Pip! And Josh's uncle had put a plate of sausages on the counter to thaw. And they were spicy jalapeno sausages. And so I come to the kitchen and he has a sausage sideways in his mouth and he is trying to boa it down. And I'm like, Pip! And he barely had teeth at this point. And I was like, oh my God. And so I went and I tried to yank it out of his mouth and he was like, no! And fighting me on it, this like 10, 11-year-old dog. I was like, oh my God. And then the sausage ripped in half and he like tried to scramble to get it. And I had to like pick it up and get it. But it's always food related.
My precious.
Another one. It's always food. He loved bananas as well. And so when I would do dog walking, I'd always bring a banana in my car and he would sit passenger with me. I learned not to do that anymore. Nicole knows where this is going. And so banana in the fucking skin on my passenger seat. I turned around to get my seatbelt and I was like, oh my God. And he has the banana sideways again, like this, trying to boa it down horizontally in his mouth. And I had to rip it out and the banana ripped in half, just like the sausage.
I just feel like you're going to end up with like a grocery store tattoo because with Fig and the love of tomatoes, you're going to have to get a tomato too. So your
it's
little
been sweet potatoes and tomatoes. That's been his thing.
Sweet potatoes. Right.
Yeah, I heard a sweet potato getting tossed around from the pantry the other day, and I'm like, what are you doing? And Fig was tossing it around.
Yeah. I feel that. Peter doesn't, I mean, Charlie never did anything. He was just perfect. But Zed used to, every now and then, like when he was feeling really squirrely, he'd pull stuff out of the refrigerator. And this was way back. He was pretty young at this point. But I remember I came home one day and I was like, what the fuck is all over the floor? And I was like, it's white. There's like white powder everywhere. And I was like,
someone at a party.
Yeah, I was like, what the fuck? I don't have any flour in the house. Like, I don't bake. Like, what is it? And then I look and I walk through and it's like everywhere. And at that time, I had a dog door, which nobody come at me. Never again will I have a dog door. But I had a dog door, and I went out back and I looked, and there's this box of cake mix half buried in the yard. And Zed is out there with like it plastered on his face from his like drool and licking. And I was like, oh, trying to bury the evidence. Gotcha. But it was like everywhere.
A murder
Everywhere.
scene of cake mix.
Yep. And none of the other dogs. At that time I had a good amount of dogs. Will not go there, but I had a good amount of dogs, and not a single one of them had anything on them. They probably sat back and were like, dude, don't do it. Don't do it.
Oh no, they were like, do it, dude.
Yeah,
do it.
Were. Yeah. But now it's the cat. Peter's pretty good. Sometimes he'll, if I leave like a wrapper or something in the sink, he'll grab that, run around and play with it. But he doesn't really eat stuff, so that's good. But now it's the cat. I have to put industrial locks on my refrigerator. And yeah. Like legit.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I had to go to Home Depot and I was like,
yeah.
I was like, I need a lock for my fridge. And he's like, oh, what about these child locks? I was like, no, I've been through all those. The cat just gives the thumb up. Like, yeah, dude, I got it. I can break through that in a second. I said, I need something industrial. Like steel. I need something steel. Like, and we had to screw it into the refrigerator. Dang. I'm not even joking. My cat he's crafty.
I'm really hoping Fig never gets to that point. Yeah. He hasn't discovered that.
Oh, he's crafty.
Like, he can grip, but
yeah. I don't know how many times I woke up in the morning and everything in my refrigerator is warm because he was having a field day in the middle of the night. I'm like,
Steven's only weakness. Like, you could leave a steak you could put a steak on the floor and he'd be like, no, I know I'm not supposed to touch that. But fresh out of the oven, chocolate chip cookies, he will climb on the counter to get to them.
Like, it's forbidden. It's forbidden.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But, like, once they cool down, but fresh out of the oven.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Karen, did you share Fern's butter story? I think that's the best story.
I don't think I shared that with you, so you should share it.
Oh my god. Okay, so I'll tell you how she is now. So Fern is very obsessed with butter. Josh, my husband, is a very big baker, and so anytime he gets the KitchenAid out, it starts going. Fern's like, it's going to fly out. Some butter sugar mixture is going to fly out at me and I'm going to lick it. And if we get the butter, she knows the butter like container in the door of the fridge. Anytime we flip it open, she's like, sup? And we're like, how? Or if we pull the butter, and I'll explain why she's like this, but I just need you to know how she is now. If we pull a box of butter out of a grocery bag, she's like, I know what that is. If I put the butter away, she's like, give me the box. I want to rip up the box. I need to shred it into a million tiny pieces. I know what was in there. I'm like, oh my God. So when she was about 5 months old, we were grilling steak outside and we made homemade herb garlic butter, had it wrapped up in saran wrap. Need to know that it was in the saran wrap because that'll be important later. And so we had maybe like 6 tablespoons of butter left. And I was like, let's just wrap it up, cover it really quick. Let's go run inside and put these dishes away and we'll come back out. Not even 5 minutes. Came back out, butter, saran wrap, whole thing, not on the table. And I was like, where is it? Where is the butter? And Fern was like, and I was like, there's no way. There's no way that puppy ate butter, plastic wrap, and all. Mm-hmm. The plastic wrap made a reappearance a few days later.
Of course it did. Of course it did.
Like, but that single event learning was so critical for her. She was like, butter is like
where it's at. Yep.
It is the thing. And so now she's a butter junkie.
Hey, I think her and I need to start a club. Neil asked if I wanted him to make me toast the other day, and I was like, no, you don't put the appropriate amount of butter on it. The toast is simply a vehicle for the main ingredient, which is the butter. So me and her, I get her. I deeply get her.
Oh, anytime we have to melt butter in the a container for baking, we'll let her lick out the butter container. I'm like, this probably isn't good for her health overall, but let her live.
Well, show dog people give their dogs butter for their coat, so I don't know.
That's why she's so shiny.
Yeah.
And greasy.
I really enjoy the left this episode just took. We just went pivot. We just
pivot. But it is necessary though, right? I mean, it's necessary.
Yeah.
We had a pretty heavy topic there. At one point, all three of us were in our feels. So So I mean, I think it's okay to bring a little levity to it. I think
absolutely,
for sure. But I do.
Sorry.
I did have one more question though, but we don't have to do it now. But I did want to bring it backwards, so I don't want to break up this levity to then go back into the deep dark trenches of everything. So you do what you were going to say, Mandy.
Oh, I was just going to say, of course, naturally with Pip, how he had a great send off with cheeseburgers and egg McMuffins and French fries and chocolate chip cookies. We sent him well on his way, and he was like, I handed him the burger from Burger King, and he was like, I have a slow-mo video. His eyes popped out of his skull. He was like, for me?
I love that.
Aww.
Yeah. Came full circle with his binge eating.
Yeah. So then I wanted to talk a little bit about I know it's like almost Karen's bedtime, but Grandma Karen over there. But
a girl who knows what she likes.
I wanted to kind of touch back on, the biggest part of really what we're talking about is how this has affected you, because we do know that there are other guardians out there that are struggling with this, and maybe they don't realize really what's going on and why they're struggling or why they're feeling the way that they're feeling. But I wanted to kind of bring it back to and I don't want to say burden in the wrong way, but the mental burden that comes along with caregiver burnout. We talk about compassion fatigue and we talk about burnout in so many other respects in this profession, in loving and owning animals as trainers. We talk about it in that context, but we don't really or haven't really touched on it from the perspective of us as a caregiver to our dogs and how that can turn into burnout that we don't recognize because we're in the middle of it and we don't see it for what it is when we're going through it. But something that really struck me about the things that you said was that is burnout. Feeling responsible as a guardian, we are responsible for every aspect of our dog's lives. And so it's only natural for us to feel the burden of that, being that responsible, 100% responsible for another being. Trying to meet everyone's needs at the same time. Just like you said, Mandy, you had to put your needs on the back burner. But I'm sure subconsciously there were times where you were like, I need something. I need XYZ too. I need to go out too. I need to have a moment to myself. And we let that slip a lot of times because we're in the middle of this heavy caregiving. And it says, I was just reading through this, and it says one of the biggest contributors to that is having a lack of independence within the context of your caregiving, that we get so tied to caregiving for something else that we forget and we lose ourselves in it. And then by the time we realize it, we're past that burnout stage. So I just wanted to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Well, maybe if I start with the effect it had on me after his passing. Losing a dog is hard in its own. Grieving is a hard journey in its own. But getting to the point where I had to put my needs on the back burner and then, losing that animal that I was prioritizing over my own needs, it threw my world upside down, because I always had my little shadow and I always had my reason for why I'm not leaving, why I can't do things. I didn't have that security blanket because I do have really bad social anxiety, and he magnified it. Not being able to leave my house, not being able to go interact with friends, go to doctor's appointments, go to the fucking grocery store. It screwed me up big time, and just kind of made me become more or less a shut-in. And so afterwards, having to heal from that, I didn't anticipate that, and having to bounce back from that. And that was really hard because I realized that, like, oh, he kind of just like exacerbated all my anxieties I had, because it was okay. Because it's like, I had my dog and I was just staying home and taking care of my dog. And now I don't have that security. And now I have to get back into the world and be a human being on my own without that security blanket. So that was something I didn't anticipate through all the grieving. But I think just, yeah, I don't know. It's a hard place to be put in, to put any being before yourself. Especially those of us that have been raised in a chaotic household where we didn't get to prioritize ourselves. It was a little like trauma coming back in my face as well. But I don't know. It's hard to even like really find the proper words to articulate it. I think it was hard to even find what my needs were, because it was always just like, Pip, what does Pip need? Pip is stressed. How do I get Pip out today? Is he going to have a good day? It was always kind of unpredictable and just like, all right, we're going to hang at home. That's why I gardened a lot, because that's the only thing I could do outside with Pip.
To be fair, though, your garden, beautiful.
It was when I was focusing on Pip, yes.
I think, too, though, you brought up a really good point that, I mean, I know that people experience this, as humans dealing with other humans, children having to deal with taking care of their parents and all, being the sole caregiver for their parents and, things like that. I know people go through this, but I think sometimes there's this thought that, well, as soon as the dog passes, that will just be back to normal. And we don't give enough attention to the loss doesn't make the burnout go away.
No.
Right? Because it doesn't overwrite all of these feelings and these emotions that we've had. And then what? Just because they're gone and now we're not doing it. Now that's an even bigger hole. It's already a hole to have lost our dogs, but now we've lost that caregiver function on top of that. And that's even an even bigger loss sometimes. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. Like, we want to say that we feel relieved. And in a way, I feel like, me going through that, I feel like a little bit relieved, right? Like, I know you're in a good place now. I know you're not hurting anymore. I know that, you're not suffering. And So there is that little bit of relief, but then also this caregiver role has been so ingrained and become part of our
It's your
selves.
routine. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're used to it because you're like, okay, what are we going to do for Pip? How are we going to make him feel good? What are we doing today, buddy? And then when you don't have that buddy, you can go into a dark place. And I definitely did.
I also kind of feel like you said something beautiful as well, and when you were trying to explain it, and you said that you don't know what the right words are, and I think that needs to be acknowledged as well, because we don't have to have the right words at any point in the grief journey. So I think I don't know if you were consciously making that connection, but I think it's really beautiful that you can acknowledge that you don't know the right words to say even now.
It's hard to encapsulate how I felt in the time, because it felt like it feels like it was so far away when it was only a year and a half ago. And it was such a traumatic experience for me living through that now that I'm out of it, it's hard to imagine how I was then, because I'm on the other side of it. But it took me a full year and a half to recover from it. And that's just grief.
Right.
But Nicole, I think you're right with the caregiver thing. It's also you're feeling like it's not importance or like I'm important, but it is, I have this role. Right. And I am dedicated to taking care of you, and we're going to get through this. And then when you don't have that, it's like, well, what do I do?
Right. And I think too, what gets tied into that too is that if we don't give that role 110%, then we tend to feel guilty, right?
Of course.
You know, I'm not giving you everything that I possibly could. I'm not giving you 110% of myself as your caregiver, because that's kind of what that role entails sometimes. And then when we feel like we either can't give that, or that we need to take a little bit of time for ourselves, there is that guilt also there too. And I think the second part of that is when we do finally get to the loss stage of this, there can be such a big sense of failure, because as the caregiver, we didn't fix it, or we didn't have as much time as we thought, or we weren't able to give as much time as we thought. And so I feel like there's that sense too, where now we're doubting everything that we did. Was it enough? Did I take care of them as best I could? And so there's so much emotion that goes into all of this.
I'm going to fuck you up with the flip side of that. Did I drag him out too long? Did I make him live too long? Was his time supposed to be sooner? And was he holding on for me? Because that was really hard for me. Because
absolutely.
When I got to the end with him, I was like, he was holding on. Like he could have gone 3 months sooner. My husband and I say that all the time. Like, it could have happened 3 months sooner. And I think he kind of like let me have time to process it, as woo-woo as that sounds.
Oh, I don't think it sounds woo-woo at all.
Not
I
at
think
all.
that only you and Pip know the journey that you were on. And if that's how it played out, that's how it played out. And it's hard to feel like that. I know I kind of felt like that too, with a little bit with Zed, because there were so many times that I was like, all right, I'm calling the vet. Okay, right. I'm calling the vet. Okay, I'm calling the vet. And there were times when I went into the vet and she was like, maybe it's not time.
Like, oh, he's chipper. Oh, he's
right.
having a day. And so you're like, okay, maybe another few weeks. We'll just see. Right. And so then you get to that point of just like waiting it out. And that's kind of a really, I can't even explain that like weird limbo you have to be in.
Yep.
but I strongly encourage anyone to listen to the Pip episode. I think that's episode 5 on my podcast. But I only say that because of the amount of people that reached out to me when they heard that episode. Reactive dog parents and dog parents of senior dogs, and just saying like, you perfectly articulated how I felt in the moment.
Right. We'll definitely link that here for sure.
I think
it's important.
You come at it from such a different perspective than what we did here. We kind of talked a little bit more about like the clinical side of it,
which is necessary.
Yeah. But I think in the podcast you shared obviously the clinical aspect, but also more of the mental health side of it. And I think that is a huge part of the conversation going forward for a lot of people. So I agree, people should absolutely listen to that one.
I'm a little more emotional in that one.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. I think it helps normalize it for people, right? I mean,
absolutely.
It's okay to cry about things. It's okay to cry about your animals. Anybody that tells you otherwise,
they're not your people. All right. So as we wrap this up, we have just a few little things at the end that we like to do. This first one, not mandatory, but do you have any questions for us? Anything at all?
Ooh. Does it need to be in relation to the topic we talked about, or just
No. You do you. You ask what you want to ask.
Both of your favorite smells.
Oh. I get made fun of. This is why I came up with the question, because this is like a running, long-standing joke, especially between me and my sister. I absolutely love the smell of skunk. Love it. Your faces.
I can get behind that.
I don't know.
That of like, if you smoke weed.
No, but I can't stand the smell of weed though.
Oh,
I mean like
roadkill skunk, like just got skunk.
Right, like just got sprayed. My dog just got sprayed, and I remember how many times Zed and Charlie got sprayed by skunks, and people were like, "Oh, your dog smells like skunk," and I'm like, "Yeah." Like, it doesn't bother me. It doesn't bother me. I actually like it. So
I feel like that's like similar to people that like propane or like.
Oh my god, yes. Oh boy, when I was in the military, jet fuel, loved it.
Jet fuel does smell good though. It does. And like skunks, like I can take it for like the passing by it on the roadkill, but like I don't want my dog to bring it in my house.
I can't sit in it and lay with it.
Yeah.
All right, Karen, what about you?
Mine will probably get me canceled in this day and age.
Oh, God.
But so growing up, my dad was a really big pipe smoker, like tobacco. And he would bring us, me and my sister, into the tobacco stores. And we would go like into like the cigar cellars and stuff. So I don't smoke, but I love the smell of like a tobacco shop or like a cigar.
I can see that like childhood memory tied to it too.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think too, tobacco smells so much different than like
a cigarette.
Oh, you know what I mean? Like it's so sweet sometimes, and yeah,
I love that.
I'll fault you for that one, Karen.
Thanks.
Anything else?
Yes. Do you guys have favorite dog names? Like for a dog that you like ever plan to have next one, even if you don't plan on having another dog? I feel like everyone has like a stockpile of names that they like. Mine are specifically from the Throne of Glass series that I've read. I've called the names.
So many good names in that one.
Right.
I don't even know what you guys are talking about.
You don't want to go down the rabbit hole.
No, yeah, I'm gonna leave that. I'm not gonna do that to you, Nicole.
Okay, thank you.
I know what my next dog's name will be. but you all are going to have to stick with me on this one.
People don't want to share it because you don't want people to take it.
Right, exactly.
Well, look, first and foremost, you want to take it, that's fine, but just know that you have to tag me in every post and give me credit for it.
Karen's coming for you.
So, my favorite movie ever, like back in the Blockbuster days, every week when we would go, I would rent the same movie. It's called The Cat from Outer Space.
What?
Okay, so it's a 70s movie.
Yep, it sure is.
It is peak, beautiful 70s
Yep.
chef's kiss. And the cat's name is Zunar J5. So my next dog is going to be named Zunar.
Nice.
Okay, I love that.
Yeah. It's a good
I
one,
always
at
think
least
of
I
it
can-
of like what would I feel okay like standing in a crowd of people
Yelling or
screaming.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I like human names. I like
Oh my God, yeah.
Norm, Norman, Gus, George.
I feel like we got to bring Max back a little bit.
No,
you know?
no. Mm-mm.
No?
Josh is really into Bob's Burgers. He really wanted to name Fern Tina.
That's cute
You know,
though.
I feel like it might
that.
almost work for her a little.
I feel like she's more of a Louise.
Yeah.
That's cute too.
Yeah. Do you have a name picked up?
I really wanted to name a dog Carrot.
See, you're going to have a grocery store. You're going to have a grocery
yeah.
store in your...
I really like the earthy names,
Yeah.
clearly.
I like it, though.
That's cute. I do like that too.
Josh liked the name Kevin, too. We always envision
Yeah.
Kevin.
Kevin the cattle dog.
Okay, so when I got Peter, we had such a hard time in the group that shall not be talked about. We had such a hard time like coming up with a name, but I wanted to name him Kevin so bad. Like I just think Kevin from The Office, dude.
I think Kevin
You and
from
me,
Home-
we vibe,
Oof.
buddy. Like we're on the same level. And so I wanted to name him Kevin, but every time I was saying that, I was picturing my parents' neighbor whose name is Kevin. And I was like, I can't do it. I cannot do it. Like I want to just picture Kevin spilling his chili everywhere. But when I say it, I'm like, I can't. I'm just thinking of my dad's neighbor. And so I didn't. But Kevin is
feel like
cute.
Peter
I love
is
it.
Peter, you know?
He is a Peter, yeah.
Yeah.
But doing like a recall at a dog park or somewhere and like, Kevin! Like,
Yeah.
it'd be so good. Because there was
Would
a
be.
dog walker in San Francisco. She walked a dog named Mark. And you would hear her throughout the park and she'd go, Mark! I'm like, are you talking to a person or a dog? Every time.
We have a dog I walk. His name is Phil. Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah, he's so
I
cute.
love human names.
Oh, we could go through a list of like dogs we've walked. I walked a dog named Betty.
Oh, cute.
And she was a little like airheaded, like scruffy Chi-Chi and just was like, boop.
Oh, that fits. I was going to say that or Dachshund or something.
Yeah, she was a dachshund mix.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's cute. That's cute.
Well, there you go. Then our last question, and you're probably going to go on forever with this one, which is totally fine because you're worth it. But how can people find you?
Oh. Oh, I won't go that far. The main accounts you can follow me on are Woof at Woof Cultr, which is my clothing business. Cultr without the E and the extra U in it. So I'm sure you guys will spell that correctly.
Absolutely.
Or at The Leashed Mind, which is the podcast. And then if you want to follow my personal, it's usually just mental health and dogs and fairy books.
All the fairy books.
And that's just at my full name, Mandy Boutelle.
I would just like to
Nice.
say that I'm so glad our friendship has reached the point where we just send memes back and forth to each other.
But it's all about our reading books that
Yes.
we're not going to put that out into the ether so people know what we read.
I don't know how you have time to read. I don't know. I don't know how you do it.
It's like during lunch when I have coffee.
What's
when,
lunch?
Like,
I don't know what lunch is.
Yeah. I avoid work sometimes.
I just saw Karen's like, oh, I just read this 5,000 page book in the weekend. And I'm like, dude, I could barely get through like a paragraph.
She texted me and she was like, I am imploring, pleading, and begging you to catch up. And I'm like, I'm trying. It's 800 pages.
So I'm going to be very honest with you here. When you overtook me in the Throne of Glass series,
I knew it.
I was like, get fucked. I'm going to win.
And she did. She asked me.
What?
And now you're just cloning me.
That is,
I was like,
I had a feeling.
that is the most nerdiest challenge I've ever heard.
And we read books that are like 500 to like 900 pages.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, I'm reading this. And she was like, I already read this chapter. I'm already this far. And I'm like, well,
I don't know why, because I have other friends that are reading this series, and I was like, okay, congratulations, you're ahead of me. But when I saw you overtook me, I was like, this woman has 45 jobs. How did she get ahead of me? I cannot allow this.
I'm not editing my podcast. That's why. That takes hours out of my day.
Right? And so I was just like, no, I have to win. And I swear, have you finished yet? Have you?
I'm halfway.
Girl. Okay.
See, Nicole, this is what I deal with.
Yeah, no. She's like, oh, I'm reading blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, yay.
Well, listen.
No, I have no idea what you're talking about.
It's just my way of shutting off my brain and not acknowledging what's going on with CJ.
To another world. Yeah.
Exactly. So
on that note, we totally are mentally stable.
It's medications.
Yes.
Well, yes.
That Adderall really helps me whip through those pages. But don't ask me how to pronounce anyone's name, okay? So that's what I messaged my other friend for, who listens to all the books. I'm like, hey, how do I say this? But
Nicole's like, you guys are fucking nerds.
I mean, I'm a pretty big nerd.
You're a nerd.
And
you studies.
I do.
Like when Neil brought home Rosie and you were like, oh, I can send you some information about scent work. You sent like 39 journals and published articles. And I was like, there's not a chance in hell of Neil ever reads them. Oh, I will read them. But I was like, I'm going to have to do a book report for Neil on this.
Oh, you terrible.
You came
that's
through,
terrible,
though.
Neil. So disappointed. I gave him some boku information there. Like,
he
top
did
of
read
the
some
line.
of them.
People have to pay for that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
He read a few of them, but you sent so many.
She's like, he read the titles.
Probably.
This is a good laugh. It's a good way to like end all the like sads.
I agree.
Exactly. All right. Do you want to send us home, Nicole, or would you like me to?
I can. I have it written down here somewhere.
I believe in you.
So it has been so much fun, Mandy, talking with you, getting to know you a little bit, even though this is such a heavy topic and it's such an important topic and an emotional topic, I feel like us being able to have some levity and being able to laugh and enjoy each other, I think is also so helpful when we're dealing with really heavy subjects. So thank you so much for being here. I mean, that's it for me. I guess nothing from you, Karen?
No, I just, as you said, thank you so much for being willing to share your story, and go check out her podcast for a little bit more of the emotional in-depth side of it.
Thank you guys for having me on. It was so fun and just therapeutic to talk about this, and I hope other pet parents can benefit from this.
And you don't have to edit this one.
I know, I'm very happy about that.
Yay, me. Well, with that, we hope you enjoyed the conversation, and please don't forget to give your dog a biscuit from us. Until next time.